Ryan had become really good at being alone. Not the sad kind of alone that people worry about, but the comfortable kind where you know exactly what your day will look like from start to finish. Every morning at 7, he'd walk into the same coffee shop on Maple Street. Same table by the window. Same black coffee, no sugar. Same laptop bag that he'd had for 3 years now. He was 34 and worked as a graphic designer from wherever he felt like working, which usually meant that corner table. His friends used to joke that the staff should just put a nameplate on it. Ryan would smile at that, but honestly, he liked the routine. After his last relationship ended about a year ago, routine felt safe. The breakup hadn't been dramatic. No shouting, no betrayal, nothing you'd see in movies. It just sort of faded away like old wallpaper peeling off slowly. One day they both looked at each other and realized they were together out of habit, not love. They'd hug goodbye like old friends, and that was that. His best friend kept trying to set him up with people, but Ryan wasn't interested. He told himself he was fine alone. That Tuesday started like any other Tuesday. The coffee shop had its usual morning crowd, people rushing in and out with their to-go cups. A few regulars like him camped out with laptops. Ryan was working on a logo design for a local charity when he noticed someone struggling near the table next to him. She was trying to balance a large black portfolio case, a coffee cup, and her purse all at once. The portfolio was one of those big professional ones that artists and architects carry around. It looked expensive and very full. When her phone started ringing in her purse, everything went wrong at once. The portfolio case slipped from under her arm and hit the floor with a heavy thud. The zipper must have been loose because papers and drawings scattered everywhere, sliding under tables and chairs. Her coffee cup tilted dangerously, but she managed to catch it just in time. Ryan didn't even think. He just got up and started helping her gather the papers. Up close, he could see they were beautiful detailed drawings of gardens and parks, with notes scribbled in neat handwriting along the margins. Trees, benches, walking paths, flower beds, all sketched out with real skill. She was kneeling on the floor grabbing papers, looking embarrassed but also kind of amused at the whole situation. She had dark hair pulled back in a messy bun and wore paint-stained jeans with a professional blazer, like she couldn't quite decide if she was going to a meeting or an art studio. "Thank you so much," she said, slightly out of breath. "I swear I had a better grip on everything before I walked in here." "No problem," Ryan said, handing her a stack of drawings he collected from under a nearby chair. "These are really good. Are you a landscape architect?" Her face lit up. "Yes? Well, trying to be." "How did you know?" He pointed to one of the drawings. The scale measurements and the plant species labels kind of gave it away. "Plus, I work in design, so I recognize the style." They stood up, her arms now full of slightly crumpled papers. She managed to stuff them back into the portfolio case and zip it properly this time. "I'm working on a project for the East Side neighborhood. They want to turn an empty lot into a community garden space." "That sounds amazing," Ryan said. And he meant it. He'd spent the last few years designing logos and websites for whoever would pay him. And lately, he'd been wondering if any of it actually mattered. She smiled at him, a genuine warm smile that reached her eyes. "Well, thanks again for the rescue. I'm Priya. By the way, Ryan." They shook hands, which felt oddly formal given that they'd just been crawling around on a coffee shop floor together. Then she went to her table, and he went back to his. He tried to focus on his work, but he kept glancing over at her. She was completely absorbed in her drawings, occasionally sipping her coffee, sometimes tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. When she left about an hour later, she gave him a little wave. He waved back, and that should have been the end of it. Just a nice moment with a stranger. But Ryan found himself thinking about those garden drawings for the rest of the day. The next morning, he went to the coffee shop at his usual time, and she wasn't there. He told himself he wasn't disappointed, that he wasn't looking for her. But he was. 3 days later, she came back. Same portfolio case, same paint-stained jeans, different blazer. This time she saw him first and smiled like they were old friends. She got her coffee and sat at the same table as last time. They didn't talk, just exchanged smiles and went about their work. This happened for more times over the next 2 weeks. Ryan started to notice little things about her. She always ordered a cappuccino with extra foam. She listened to music on small wireless earbuds while she worked. She had a habit of sketching on napkins when she was thinking through ideas. Once, she left a napkin behind with a beautiful tiny drawing of a cherry blossom tree on it. Ryan almost kept it but felt weird about it, so he left it there. On the 5th time, it was raining hard outside. The kind of rain that comes down in sheets and makes everyone run for cover. The coffee shop was more crowded than usual, with people escaping the weather. Ryan was already at his table when Priya walked in, shaking water out of her hair and laughing at how soaked she'd gotten in just the run. From her car to the door, she looked around for a place to sit, but every table was taken. Their eyes met across the room. Ryan felt his heart do something strange, like it skipped and then started again. He gestured to the empty chair at his table. She smiled and walked over. "Mind if I invade your workspace?" she asked. "Please," he said, moving his laptop bag to make room for her portfolio. They worked in comfortable silence for about 20 minutes before she spoke. "What are you working on today?" He turned his laptop so she could see. "Logo for a food bank. They want something that feels welcoming but also professional." She leaned in to look closer, and he caught the scent of her shampoo, something floral and clean. "I like that font choice. It's friendly, thanks. What about you?" And just like that, they started talking. Really talking. She told him about her memorial garden project, how the neighborhood had lost several families in an apartment fire 2 years ago, and the community wanted to create a space to remember them, while also bringing something beautiful into the area. "It's the most important thing I've ever worked on," she said quietly. "I want to get it right. These people deserve something special." Ryan felt something shift in his chest. Here was someone who cared about her work the way he wished he cared about his. "That's incredible. Really? How did you get into landscape architecture?" Her whole face changed when she smiled. "My grandmother. She had this tiny backyard garden in the city, barely bigger than a parking space. But she made it magical. Roses, herbs, vegetables, even a small fountain she built herself. She used to tell me that gardens are about hope. You plant something tiny and believe it will grow into something beautiful." They talked for 2 hours straight. The coffee shop staff came around offering refills 3 times. Ryan learned that Priya had moved to the city 3 years ago for a fresh start. Though she didn't say from what, she learned that he'd left a stable corporate design job to freelance, because he wanted his work to mean something, though he wasn't sure he'd achieve that yet. Finally, the rain started to let up, and Priya said she needed to go to a meeting with her clients. They packed up their things slowly, neither of them in a rush despite her meeting dot at the door. She stopped and turned to him. People were pushing past them to get in and out, but she didn't seem to notice. She stepped a little closer, close enough that he could see tiny flecks of gold in her brown eyes that he hadn't noticed before. "My grandmother used to say that everything worth growing starts with someone brave enough to plant the first seed," she said softly, almost in a whisper. The noise of the coffee shop faded away. The people rushing around them blurred into nothing. Ryan felt completely present in this moment in a way he hadn't felt in over a year. His heart was pounding, and he couldn't look away from her eyes. Nothing else mattered except this person standing in front of him, sharing something precious from her past. "That's beautiful," he managed to say. She smiled and stepped back, the moment breaking gently. "Same time tomorrow?" He nodded, not trusting himself to say more. She walked out into the damp afternoon, and he stood there for a full minute just watching her go, wondering what had just happened to him. Ryan showed up at the coffee shop the next day 15 minutes earlier than usual. He told himself it was because he woke up early, not because he was excited to see Priya. But he knew he was lying to himself. She arrived at exactly the same time as always, and her face brightened when she saw him already there. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became the best part of Ryan's day. What started as shared work sessions turned into long conversations about everything and nothing. One Saturday, Priya suggested they take a walk instead of sitting inside. "I want to show you something," she said with a mysterious smile. She led him through neighborhoods he'd lived near for years but never really explored. Every few blocks, she'd stop and point out small green spaces he'd never noticed. A tiny pocket park between two buildings with a single beautiful oak tree, a community garden hidden behind a church, a row of flowering trees that someone had planted along a forgotten alley. Most people just rush past these places, she said as they stood in front of a small neighborhood garden where elderly people were tending vegetable plots. But they're everywhere if you pay attention. Little pieces of hope planted in concrete. Ryan found himself seeing the city differently through her eyes. She noticed beauty in places he'd walked past 1,000 times. She knew the names of trees and flowers, could spot a well-designed space versus a careless one, understood how light and shadow moved through green spaces during different times of day. "Your turn," she said. "Show me your city." He took her to a small independent bookstore where he designed the logo for free, because he believed in what they were doing. Then to a community center where his posters hung on the walls, advertising free tutoring programs, a food co-op, a youth arts program, a neighborhood newsletter. All small clients, none of them paying much, but all of them doing work that mattered. "This is amazing," Priya said, looking at his designs on the community center wall. "You're helping all these organizations tell their stories. It doesn't feel like much sometimes." Ryan admitted, "My friends from my old corporate job are designing for major brands, making real money. I'm barely getting by." She looked at him seriously. "But you're making a difference. That's worth more than money, is it?" he asked, surprising himself with the honesty. "Yes," she said firmly. "Trust me, after everything I've been through, I know what matters and what doesn't." There was weight in those words, something heavy she wasn't saying. Ryan wanted to ask but didn't want to push. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their hands occasionally brushing against each other as they moved through the crowded sidewalk. The following week, Priya invited him to visit a botanical garden 2 hours away. "They have this amazing orchid collection, and I need some inspiration for the memorial garden. Want to come?" Ryan said yes before he even thought about it. They drove out on a Saturday morning in her old blue sedan that smelled like coffee and had gardening catalogs scattered across the back seat. She made a playlist for the drive, an eclectic mix of everything from old soul music to indie rock to classical pieces. The botanical garden was stunning. Acres of carefully designed landscapes, each section telling a different story. They wandered through rose gardens and Japanese Zen spaces, past ponds with lily pads and through meadows of wildflowers. But the orchid house was something else entirely. It was kept warm and humid, like a tropical jungle. Hundreds of orchids in every color imaginable bloomed on trees and in specially designed beds. The air felt thick and alive. Priya moved slowly through the space, stopping to photograph certain flowers and take notes. Ryan followed her, content to just watch her work. She was completely in her element here, talking quietly about different species, pointing out clever design choices and how the plants were displayed. Then she stopped in front of a particular orchid, deep purple with delicate white edges. She pulled out her phone to photograph it, then turned to Ryan. "Come here," she said softly. "Look at this one up close." He moved next to her, and she leaned in close to him, their shoulders touching. She was pointing at something about the flower, telling him its scientific name. But Ryan couldn't focus on her words. He was acutely aware of how close she was, how her arm pressed against his, how he could feel the warmth of her through his shirt. "Some things only bloom once every 7 years," she whispered, her voice quiet in the humid stillness of the orchid house. "You have to pay attention, or you miss it entirely." Her breath was warm against his ear. Without thinking, Ryan reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. She looked up at him, and something passed between them, something wordless and huge. They stood like that for a long moment, hands clasped, surrounded by rare flowers in a warm, quiet space. Ryan felt his heart pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. On the drive home, something shifted. The easy conversation from the morning felt heavier now, weighted with things unsaid. Ryan's mind was racing. He was falling for this woman, and it terrified him. What if he wasn't enough? What if this feeling faded? What if he hurt her somehow? His last relationship had ended because they'd both been too comfortable, too passive. But this felt like the opposite, too intense, too much. He didn't know how to handle this kind of feeling. You got quiet, Priya said as they drove through the darkening evening. Just tired, Ryan lied. Long day, but she wasn't buying it. He could see her glancing at him, trying to read his expression. When she dropped him off at his apartment, he thanked her quickly and practically ran inside. Over the next week, Ryan did something he wasn't proud of. He started pulling away. When Priya texted him, he'd take hours to respond. He stopped going to the coffee shop at their usual time. He made excuses about being busy with work, about having deadlines. It wasn't entirely a lie. He did have work to do, but mostly he was scared. Scared of how much he was starting to feel. Scared of getting hurt. Scared of not being enough for someone like her, someone who'd been through real pain and loss. His best friend called him out on it. What are you doing, man? You've been talking about this woman for weeks, and now you're ghosting her? I'm not ghosting her. I'm just busy. You're scared. Ryan couldn't argue with that. After a week and a half of this, there was a knock on his apartment door one evening. He opened it to find Priya standing there, and she did not look happy. Can I come in? She asked, her voice tight. He stepped aside, and she walked into his small living room. Priya stood in Ryan's living room with her arms crossed, and he could see she was trying to keep her emotions in check. Her jaw was set in that way people do when they're hurt but don't want to show it. Look, she started, her voice shaking slightly, if you're not interested in being friends anymore, just say so. But don't do this disappearing act. I deserve better than that. Ryan felt his stomach drop. He'd been so caught up in his own fear that he hadn't thought about how his behavior would affect her. Priya, I'm sorry. I've just been really busy with work and she cut him off. Don't give me the work excuse. I've been texting you for 10 days. You've responded maybe 3 times, always with one-word answers. You stopped coming to the coffee shop. You're avoiding me, and I need to know why. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. It's not that simple. Then make it simple, she said, her voice rising. Because from where I'm standing, we had a really good day together, and then you vanished. If I did something wrong, tell me. If you're not interested in me that way, fine, I can handle that. But this silence? This is cruel. The word hit him hard. Cruel. He'd never thought of himself as cruel. But she was right. He'd been so wrapped up in protecting himself that he'd hurt her in the process. Sit down. He said quietly, please. You didn't do anything wrong. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of his couch, her posture still defensive. Ryan sat in the chair across from her, needing some distance to get the words out. I'm terrified. He finally said, that's the truth. I'm completely terrified of what I'm feeling. Priya's expression softened slightly, but she didn't speak. She just waited for him to continue. My last relationship ended because neither of us felt anything real, Ryan continued, the words coming faster now. We were together for 4 years, and it was comfortable and safe and completely empty. When it ended, I felt relieved, and I told myself I was fine being alone. I convinced myself that big feelings weren't real, that they were just chemicals in your brain that fade away eventually. He looked down at his hands. And then I met you, and everything I told myself turned out to be wrong. I feel more when I'm with you than I felt in 4 years with my ex. And that scares me to death. Why does it scare you? Priya asked softly, because what if I'm not enough? The words burst out of him. You're this amazing person doing this meaningful work, creating beautiful things that help people heal. And I'm just a guy who makes logos. You've been through real loss, real pain. I can see it in you, even though you haven't told me about it. And I'm worried that I'm not strong enough or deep enough or good enough for someone like you. Priya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm but firm. You don't get to make that decision for me. Ryan looked up at her. You don't get to decide that you're not enough for me, she continued. That's my choice to make, not yours. And you definitely don't get to pull away and hide without even talking to me about it. You're right, he said. I know you're right. She moved from the couch and sat down on the floor in front of his chair. Looking up at him, her eyes were shining with unshed tears. Do you want to know why I moved to this city 3 years ago? Ryan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. I was engaged, Priya said. His name was Michael, and we'd been together since college. We were planning this huge wedding, had already sent out invitations. And then 6 weeks before the wedding, he was driving home from work and a drunk driver ran a red light. Ryan felt his chest tighten. Priya, I'm so sorry. He died instantly, she continued, her voice steady despite the tears now rolling down her cheeks. One moment he was there, texting me about what to have for dinner, and the next moment he was gone. Just like that. No warning, no goodbye, nothing. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. For a year after that, I was a ghost. I went through the motions of living, but felt nothing. I moved here to get away from all the memories, threw myself into work, built gardens for other people while my own life felt like a wasteland. Ryan slid down to the floor next to her, wanting to be closer, and then one day, Priya continued, I dropped my portfolio in a coffee shop, and this guy with kind eyes helped me pick up my drawings. And he looked at my garden sketches like they actually mattered. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt something. Just a tiny spark, but it was something. She turned to face him fully. So yes, I've been through real loss. And yes, it changed me. But do you know what I learned from losing Michael? I learned that nothing is guaranteed. Life doesn't promise you tomorrow. All you have is right now, this moment. Ryan felt tears in his own eyes now. I'm scared too, Priya said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. I'm terrified actually, because caring about you means I could get hurt again. It means opening myself up to the possibility of more loss. But the alternative is staying safe and alone and half alive. And I can't do that anymore. I won't. She reached out and took his face in her hands, gentle but firm. Her touch was warm, grounding. I'm not asking you for forever, Ryan. I'm not asking for promises about the future. I'm asking you to be here now, with me, for however long this lasts. Can you do that? Her forehead was almost touching his now, her breath warm on his face. The small living room with its second-hand furniture and piles of design books faded away. Nothing existed except this moment, this person, this choice. I'm not asking you to be perfect. She whispered, I'm asking you to be present. To stop hiding behind your fear and just be here. Ryan felt something break open in his chest. Like a dam he'd been building for the past year suddenly gave way. All the fear and doubt and self-protection washed away, leaving just the simple truth. He wanted this. He wanted her. He wanted to be brave enough to take this risk. Yes, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Yes, I'm here. I'm so sorry I pulled away. I'm here now. And then he kissed her. It started gentle, tentative, asking permission. But she kissed him back, and it deepened, became urgent and real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ryan felt like he'd been asleep for a year and had just woken up. Priya smiled through her tears. Okay then, he echoed. They sat on the floor of his living room for another hour. Just talking, really talking. She told him more about Michael, about their relationship, about the grief process and how it wasn't linear like people think. He told her about his parents' divorce when he was young, about his fear of commitment, about the emptiness he'd felt in his last relationship. I think I stayed with my ex for so long because feeling nothing felt safe, Ryan admitted. If you don't feel deeply, you can't get deeply hurt, but you also can't feel deeply happy. Priya pointed out. You can't have one without the risk of the other. It was almost midnight when she finally got up to leave. At the door, she turned back to him. So tomorrow, coffee shop, usual time? I'll be there early, Ryan promised. She laughed. Don't overdo it. Usual time is fine. After she left, Ryan sat on his couch for a long time, just processing everything that had happened. He felt raw and vulnerable and completely alive. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he was excited about tomorrow. The next morning, he got to the coffee shop at exactly their usual time. Priya was already there, 2 cappuccinos on the table, one for each of them. She'd remember that he mentioned once liking cappuccinos, but always ordering regular coffee because it was cheaper. I figured we could both try something different today, she said with a smile. Ryan sat down across from her, and they fell into easy conversation like the past week and a half of weirdness had never happened. But it felt different now, deeper, more honest. They weren't just two people sharing a table anymore. They were two people who'd chosen to be vulnerable with each other, to take a risk together. Over the next few weeks, they navigated what it meant to actually be in a relationship. It wasn't all movie-perfect moments. They had their first disagreement when Ryan made plans with his friends on a night. Priya had wanted to introduce him to her sister. They worked through it, learned to communicate better. They had quiet mornings where they'd sit together in comfortable silence, both working on their projects. They had adventurous days exploring new parts of the city. They had moments of doubt and moments of complete certainty. Ryan met Priya's family, who loved him immediately. Priya met Ryan's small circle of friends, who pulled him aside and told him not to mess this up. Life moved forward, imperfect and real and beautiful. 3 months into their relationship, Priya asked Ryan to help her with something important. They were having dinner at her apartment, a small one-bedroom place filled with plants and sketches and photographs of gardens from around the world. I need to ask you something, she said, looking nervous in a way he rarely saw her. And you can totally say no if you're not comfortable with it. What is it? Ryan asked, setting down his fork. The Memorial Garden project. The one I've been working on all this time? We're finally moving into the final design phase, and I need someone to create the signage and wayfinding graphics for it. She paused, looking at him intently. I want that person to be you. Ryan felt his breath catch. Priya, that's your most important project. Are you sure you want to trust me with that? I'm completely sure, she said. I've seen your work. You understand what matters. You know how to tell a story through design. And more than that, you get what this garden is supposed to be about. It's not just pretty landscaping. It's about memory and hope and healing. I don't know what to say, Ryan admitted. This is huge. Say yes, Priya smiled. Please say yes. I can't think of anyone I'd rather work with on this, so Ryan said yes. And for the next 2 months, they worked together on the Memorial Garden in a way that brought them even closer. They'd spend evenings at Priya's dining table, her with her landscape plans spread out, him with his design sketches, figuring out how to make everything work together. The garden was being built in what had been an empty lot in the East Side neighborhood. The apartment building that had burned down had been demolished, leaving just bare earth. Priya's design transformed it into something beautiful. Walking paths that curved like gentle rivers, seating areas where people could gather, flower beds that would bloom in different colors throughout the year, a small water feature in the center, and trees, lots of trees, each one planted in memory of someone lost in the fire. Ryan's job was to create signs that would guide people through the space and tell the stories of those who died. But he didn't want typical memorial plaques. Working closely with the families, he designed something more personal. Each tree had a small bronze marker with the person's name, but also a line about who they were. Loved baking cookies for the whole building, never. Missed his daughter's soccer games, taught everyone how to salsa. Danced simple human details. That made them real. The main entrance sign was Ryan's favorite piece. Instead of just stating the garden's name, it included a quote that one of the survivors had shared. We plant these trees, not to forget our grief, but to grow something beautiful alongside it. Working on the project changed something in Ryan. 4 years, he'd felt like his design work was shallow, meaningless. But this mattered. Every decision about fonts and layouts and materials felt important, because it was serving something bigger than just looking nice. He was helping people tell their stories, helping a community heal. Priya watched him transform as he worked. You're different, she said one night as they reviewed the latest design proofs. You seem more alive when you're working on this, because it matters, Ryan said simply. I forgot what it felt like to work on something that actually matters. The garden's dedication ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday in late spring. The construction crews had been working for weeks, and Priya had been on site almost every day, overseeing every detail. The night before the opening, she was so nervous she couldn't sleep. What if people don't like it? She asked Ryan at 2 in the morning. They were at his apartment, and she'd been tossing and turning for hours. They're going to love it. Ryan assured her, "You've created something amazing, but what if I miss something? What if the design doesn't work the way I thought it would?" Ryan pulled her close. "Then it doesn't, and that's okay. You've poured your heart into this. You've honored these people's memories. That's what matters." The morning of the dedication was perfect. Clear blue sky, temperature in the mid-70s. A light breeze that made the newly planted trees sway gently. The neighborhood had turned out in force. Families of those who died, survivors of the fire, local residents, city officials. Even some pressed out. Ryan stood with Priya as the mayor gave a speech about resilience and community. Then the pastor from the local church said a prayer. And then it was time for the families to see the garden for the first time. Watching people walk through the space that Priya had created was incredible. An elderly woman stopped at a tree marked with her son's name and touched the bronze plaque gently, reading the line about how he coached Little League baseball. She was crying, but she was also smiling. A young girl ran ahead to find her grandfather's tree. Calling back to her mother when she spotted it, people gathered in the seating areas, pointing out different flowers and features. They walked the curved paths, discovering new details around each corner. They sat by the water feature, the sound of flowing water creating a peaceful atmosphere. Ryan watched a mother and her teenage daughter stop at one of his entrance signs. The daughter read the quote aloud, and the mother nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. This, Ryan thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Creating something that touches people, that helps them. That matters. Priya was surrounded by community members thanking her, telling her stories about their loved ones, expressing gratitude for the space she created. Her eyes kept finding Ryan's across the crowd, and each time she'd smile. This expression of pure joy and relief and accomplishment. When the official ceremony ended and the crowd began to thin out, Ryan and Priya finally had a moment alone. They walked through the garden together, just the two of them, taking in what they'd created. "We did it," Priya said softly, squeezing his hand. "You did it," Ryan corrected. "I just helped with some signs." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "No, we did this together. Your designs aren't just signs, Ryan. They're part of how this space tells its story. They guide people through it, help them understand it. This garden wouldn't be complete without your work." Ryan felt emotion rising in his throat. "I've spent years wondering if my work mattered, if I was wasting my talent on meaningless projects. But this, what we did here, this actually means something. All your work means something," Priya said firmly. "Every logo you design for a nonprofit, every poster for a community program, all of it matters because you're helping organizations tell their stories and serve their communities. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you." They sat down on one of the benches, the evening sun casting golden light through the young trees. The garden was quiet now, peaceful. In a few years, when the trees grew taller and the flowers filled in more completely, it would be even more beautiful. But right now, in this moment, it was perfect. "I love you," Ryan said. The words came out easily, naturally, without the fear that would have stopped him months ago. Priya turned to look at him, her eyes wide. They hadn't said those words to each other yet. They'd been dancing around them for weeks, but neither had taken the leap. "I love you too," she said, her voice full of emotion. "I think I have for a while now. I was just scared to say it." "Why scared?" Ryan asked. "Because saying it makes it real," Priya admitted. "And making it real means acknowledging that I could lose you. And I know what that loss feels like." Ryan took her hands in his. "I can't promise you forever. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. But I can promise you that I'm here now, fully here, and I'm not going anywhere by choice. You taught me that life doesn't give us guarantees. All we have is now. So right now, in this moment, I love you completely." Priya leaned her head against his shoulder. "That's enough," she whispered. "Right now is enough." They sat there as the sun set, watching the shadows lengthen across the garden they created together. People occasionally walked past, residents from the neighborhood coming to see the new space. Kids played near the water feature. An elderly couple walked slowly down one of the paths, holding hands. This garden would serve the community for years to come. It would be a place for quiet reflection and joyful gatherings. Children would grow up playing here. People would come here to remember and to hope. And every time Ryan saw it, he'd remember this moment, sitting with the woman he loved, understanding finally what it meant to create something that truly mattered. Life settled into a new rhythm after the memorial garden opened. Ryan and Priya became a real couple, not just two people figuring things out, but partners who'd weathered storms together and come out stronger. They still had their usual table at the coffee shop on Maple Street, but now they work side by side, their projects intertwining more and more. The memorial garden had done something unexpected for both of their careers. After the local press covered the dedication ceremony, other organizations started reaching out. A school wanted Priya to design a learning garden. A hospital wanted Ryan to redesign their wayfinding system. Community groups that had never thought about professional design services suddenly understood their value, but more importantly, Ryan and Priya had proven they could create something meaningful together. They started taking on collaborative projects, intentionally combining her landscape design with his visual communication skills. Of course, it wasn't all perfect. No relationship is. They had their first real fight about 3 months after the garden opened. It was over something that seemed small at first. Whose family to visit for Thanksgiving? But it touched on deeper issues about compromise and independence. Priya wanted to go to her parents' house upstate. Ryan had already committed to visiting his mom, who'd been struggling with health issues. Neither wanted to back down. The argument escalated. Voices raised, old insecurities bubbling up. "You're being selfish," Priya said, immediately regretting it. "And you're being inflexible," Ryan shot back, also regretting it instantly. They stood in Priya's apartment, both angry and hurt, wondering if this was it, if this was where it all fell apart. But then Ryan took a breath and said, "Wait, stop. We're doing this wrong." "What do you mean?" Priya asked, still defensive. "We're acting like there's a winner and a loser here. Like one of us has to give up what we want. But that's not how this works." He sat down on her couch, suddenly tired. "What if we did Thanksgiving with my mom and the following weekend with your family? Or split the day between both?" Priya sat down next to him. "I like the second weekend idea. Your mom needs you right now." Just like that, the fight deflated. They'd navigated their first real conflict by actually talking through it, instead of letting it fester or running away. It wasn't dramatic or movie perfect, but it was real. And it worked. They spent Thanksgiving with Ryan's mom, who adored Priya immediately. The following weekend, they drove upstate to Priya's parents' house, a beautiful old farmhouse with land that Priya's father had been slowly turning into an experimental garden. Ryan fit right in, helping Priya's dad with some design ideas for garden markers while Priya and her mom cooked. Winter came, and with it, quieter times. They developed little rituals. Sunday mornings making breakfast together, Thursday evenings trying new restaurants, late-night conversations about everything from philosophy to silly childhood memories. Ryan learned that Priya talked to plants when she worked on her designs. Priya discovered that Ryan listened to instrumental music when he was on a tight deadline. One January evening, they were walking through the memorial garden, which looked different under snow. The trees were bare, the flowers dormant, but it was still beautiful in a stark, peaceful way. A few people were there despite the cold, sitting quietly on the benches. "I think I want to do this for the rest of my life," Priya said suddenly. "Design gardens?" Ryan asked. "No. I mean, yes, but I mean this." She gestured around them. "Creating spaces that help people, that give communities something beautiful and meaningful. Not just pretty landscaping for rich people's backyards." Ryan understood exactly what she meant. "Then that's what you should do. It doesn't pay as well," Priya said. "Community projects never have big budgets. But it matters more," Ryan said, echoing what she'd told him months ago. She smiled. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both choosing meaning over money. We'll probably always be broke," Ryan joked. Probably, Priya agreed. But we'll be happy. And she was right. Over the next several months, they built a life that might not have looked impressive on paper but felt rich in all the ways that mattered. They collaborated on a memorial playground for a neighborhood that had lost a child to illness. They worked with a veterans organization to create a healing garden at AVA facility. They helped a struggling community center redesign their entire visual identity and outdoor space. The work was challenging and sometimes frustrating. Budgets were tight. Clients didn't always understand their vision. Projects got delayed or changed. But they were making a real difference, leaving their mark on the community in tangible ways. Ryan's old corporate friends sometimes asked if he regretted leaving the stable job. The answer was always no. Sure, he had less money. He drove an older car, lived in a smaller apartment, worried sometimes about making rent. But he woke up every morning excited about his work. He felt connected to something larger than himself. One spring day, almost exactly a year after the memorial garden had opened, Ryan and Priya went back to visit it. The transformation was remarkable. The trees had grown significantly, their branches filling out with fresh green leaves. The flower beds were bursting with color, exactly as Priya had planned. The grass had filled in thick and healthy. The space looked established, like it had always been there. More importantly, the garden was being used exactly as Priya had hoped. Kids played on the pathways, elderly residents sat in the shade reading books. A young couple was having a quiet picnic. Someone had left fresh flowers at one of the memorial trees. It's alive, Priya said softly. Not just the plants, but the whole space. It's become part of the community's life. Ryan put his arm around her. You did that. You created something that will be here long after we're gone. They walked to their favorite bench, the one where they'd sat on opening day. Someone had carved initials into the armrest at some point. The bronze plaques Ryan had designed had developed a gentle patina. Everything showed signs of being used and loved. Can I tell you something? Priya asked, leaning against Ryan. Always, after Michael died, I didn't think I'd ever feel happy again. Not really happy. Just going through the motions happy. I thought the best parts of my life were behind me. She paused, watching children play near the water feature. But this past year with you has been the happiest of my life. Not despite everything I've been through, but maybe because of it. Because I know how precious this is. Ryan felt his throat tighten with emotion. You changed my life, you know. I was sleepwalking through everything before I met you. Just existing, not really living. We changed each other, Priya corrected gently. A group of teenagers walked past, laughing and taking selfies near the flowers. An elderly woman was doing tai-chi on the grass. The garden hummed with life and energy. I've been thinking about something, Ryan said carefully, and I want to say it right. So just let me get it out. Priya sat up, giving him her full attention. I don't need to know what's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years, Ryan continued. I don't need guarantees or promises about forever. But I do know that right now, in this moment, I want to build a life with you. I want to keep creating things that matter together. I want more mornings at the coffee shop and more projects that challenge us and more arguments that we work through and more moments like this. He turned to face her fully. I know we can't control the future, but I can control what I do right now. And right now, I choose you. Every day, I choose you. Priya's eyes were shining. That's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. I'm not finished, Ryan said with a small smile. I'm not asking you to marry me or move in together or anything like that. Not yet, anyway. I'm just saying that you're it for me. You're the person I want to share my life with for however long we get. Priya leaned in close. Close enough that he could count the gold flecks in her eyes, close enough that their breath mingled. I choose you too, she whispered. Every single day, I choose you. This time, when nothing else mattered, it wasn't because the world had faded away. It was because they built a world together that was exactly where they wanted to be. The garden around them, the work they created, the life they were building, all of it was real and present and theirs. They kissed, gentle and unhurried, as the spring afternoon stretched around them. When they pulled apart, Priya was smiling that smile he loved, the one that made her whole face light up. "You know what my grandmother would have said about us?" Priya asked. "What?" "She would have said we were brave enough to plant the seeds, and patient enough to watch them grow." Ryan looked around at the thriving garden, at the trees reaching toward the sky, at the flowers blooming in brilliant colors, at the people using and loving this space. Then he looked at Priya, this incredible woman who taught him how to be present, how to take risks, how to create things that mattered. She would have been right, he said. They stayed in the garden until evening, watching the light change, talking about their next project, making plans for dinner, simply being together. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring. They couldn't predict the challenges they'd face or the joys they'd experience. But they had right now, this moment, this choice to keep showing up for each other and for the work that gave their lives meaning. And as the sun set behind the trees they'd helped plant, Ryan understood something fundamental.